Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a topic that's at the very heart of modern software development and, you guessed it, a major part of the AWS Certified Developer exam. We're talking about safe deployment strategies. We're going to break down blue-green, canary, and how to become a master of the rollback. Let's get right into it.
All right, let's kick things off with a question that every single one of us in a tech role can relate to. It's that feeling that, just sends a chill right down your spine.
And there it is. That's the core dilemma of our jobs, isn't it? The very act of innovating and making things better is also what introduces the risk of failure. Every single deployment can feel like a gamble, but with the right strategies, we can absolutely stack the odds in our favor.
And look, this isn't just some nice-to-have best practice. This is a core principle of the whole AWS DevOps philosophy. The focus is always on reducing the impact on your customers. And that's exactly why having a deep understanding of these strategies is so critical for the DVA CO2 exam.
So, how do we get away from that terror of the big bang deployment, where everything changes at once? Well, our first line of defense is a really elegant and powerful strategy, the blue/green deployment.
The beauty of this whole approach is just how simple the concept is. Instead of messing with your live environment directly, you build a perfect, identical copy of it, and you get that copy ready to take over at a moment's notice.
So this slide here just lays it all out perfectly. You've got this clear separation. The blue environment is your current, stable production environment. It's battle-tested and handling 100% of your user traffic. Meanwhile, over here, the green environment is your brand new, completely isolated replica. It's got the new code, and you can hammer it with every test imaginable without a single customer ever knowing.
This whole process is built for predictability. And for the exam, you've got to know how AWS Code Deploy makes this even easier. When you use it with, say, an application load balancer and Amazon ECS, Code Deploy automates this entire flow. It basically sets up two target groups, one for blue, one for green, and when everything's ready, it just updates the listener rules on the load balancer to send all traffic to the green group. It's a completely seamless zero-downtime switch.
Okay, but what happens if, despite all of that careful testing, a critical bug slips through and you only notice it after you've made the switch? This right here is where blue/green really shines, and it's a concept you absolutely have to know.
The rollback is the real magic trick. It's not a panicked scramble to redeploy or push a hotfix. No, it's just a simple, clean flip of a switch. You just tell the application load balancer, hey, send the traffic back to the original blue environment, which, remember, is still running perfectly in its known good state. And just like that, your users are back on the stable version, and you can figure out what went wrong, offline, and without pressure.
Now, blue/green is an amazing tool, but it is kind of a blunt instrument. It's all or nothing. What if you want to be a bit more subtle, or you want to test your new code with a small group of real users before you go all in? Well, for that, we need a more nuanced approach. Enter the Canary Release. And yeah, the name is a nod to that old-school practice in coal mines where they'd use canaries to detect dangerous gases. In our world, we're sending a small percentage of our real users into the mine of our new code to see if it's safe. It's all about minimizing the blast radius if something goes wrong.
Okay, so let's put our exam hats on for a second. If you see a question that describes a developer routing just 10% of API traffic to a new AWS Lambda function version while keeping an eye on errors, your brain should just immediately light up and shout Canary Release. You're testing with a small, controlled slice of real production traffic to see how it behaves before committing to a full rollout.
And this is a fantastic example of a specific implementation detail you'll want to remember for the test. AWS SAM makes this incredibly simple. In your SAM template, you can define a deployment preference like linear 10% every 1 minute and use this auto-publish alias property. This tells AWS to automatically publish a new version of your Lambda and then slowly, gradually shift traffic over to it. It makes doing a canary deployment for serverless apps super easy to manage.
This is maybe the most important part of a canary strategy. A gradual rollout is totally useless if you're not watching it like a hawk. The success or failure of the whole thing really hinges on having effective automated monitoring in place.
So, when you're keeping an eye on your Canary Release, a tool like CloudWatch Synthetics is going to be your absolute best friend. Think of these as little scripts that run on a schedule, acting like real users hitting your APIs. So if an exam question asks what metric could trigger a rollback for a REST API, success percent from a synthetic canary is a perfect answer.
If those synthetic users start seeing failures and that metric drops below your threshold, you can have a CloudWatch alarm automatically tell code deploy, nope, shut it down, and initiate a rollback.
All right, now for a critical scenario question that trips up a lot of people. Canary deployments are amazing, but they are not a silver bullet, and they can be especially dangerous when you're talking about your database. This is a classic exam trap, so listen up. If your new code requires a breaking change to your database schema, a Canary release is basically a recipe for disaster. Think about it. You'd have 10% of your app writing data in a format that the other 90% can't even read. That's just data corruption waiting to happen. For these big breaking changes, the all-at-once switch of a blue/green deployment is a much safer choice.
Okay, so we've talked about blue/green, we've talked about Canary. Let's kind of take a step back and look at the foundation that makes all of this work so reliably. And that foundation is immutable infrastructure.
This is a huge concept in the AWS well-architected framework. It's a total shift in how you think about your infrastructure. The old way, mutable, is where you treat your servers like pets. You give them names, you log into them to apply patches, you nurse them back to health. With immutable infrastructure, you treat your servers like cattle. They're anonymous, they're identical, and if one has a problem, you don't try to fix it. You just replace it with a brand new, healthy one.
And that is the key benefit right there. When a service like AWS Elastic Beanstalk does an immutable update, it doesn't touch your running EC2 instances. Instead, it spins up a whole new set of instances in a separate auto-scaling group, and only when they are 100% healthy does it swap them in. This is how it guarantees the new version never mixes with the old, which gives you a clean, predictable, and repeatable deployment every single time.
Look, even with the absolute best planning and the safest deployment strategies in the world, things can and will still go wrong. And that brings us to our final and maybe most important line of defense, the rollback.
So in AWS code pipeline, you've basically got two options. The automatic rollback is your first line of defense. It gets triggered by a clear, undeniable failure. A health check fails, or one of those CloudWatch alarms we talked about goes off. But what about the sneakier bugs that automation can't catch?
Let's just imagine a scenario. Your pipeline runs, all your automated tests pass with flying colors. Everything is green, the deployment is technically a success, but you know something is still not quite right.
This is the perfect example of when you'd need a manual rollback. Your automated functional tests probably aren't going to catch that a button is like 5 pixels off to the left. But your product owner, they're going to spot it in 2 seconds. For the exam, you need to know that a developer can go right into the code pipeline console, find that deployment stage, and manually trigger a rollback. That just redeploys the last known good version and immediately fixes the experience for your customers.
So when we pull this all together, what's the big takeaway here? These strategies, they're not just about pushing code. They're about changing your entire development culture. When you embrace things like immutable infrastructure, blue/green, Canary, and you have a solid rollback plan, you completely transform deployments. They stop being this source of fear and stress, and they become a routine, low-risk source of real competitive advantage. You can ship faster, you can do it with way more confidence, and you can build the kinds of resilient, innovative systems that really define what the modern cloud is all about.